So we finally find out about the specimen that can actually kill the hybrids. And as much as that's an interesting fact, Isaac became its first victim. And while I was watching it, I was wondering how Boy Cavalier would react to it, because Isaac was never supposed to die. And not just Isaac, but the hybrids in general. Prodigy did not spend trillions to create immortality, only to find out something is out there that feeds on them. Also, their whole pitch was that the Lost Boys were meant to be untouchable, and that the hybrids with synthetic bodies could outlast anything. And that makes them functionally immortal. But in episode 6, that illusion shatters, because Isaac, or Toodles if you prefer, is actually gone. And the way it happens makes it even worse. He isn't taken out in some heroic sacrifice or a big battle. He dies because he makes a mistake. And I think since the hybrids are kids, these are the kind of small mistakes, with huge consequences that'll be their doom. So he lies to Kirsch that Curly was not with him when she was right there, so he can feed the specimens on his own. Another thing that stood out to me is Kirsch. He's always watching, so he had to know Isaac was lying, but he didn't step in. So what's up with that? Anyways, we'll get into that later, but for now, let's get back to Isaac. Because he steps into a pen he should never have entered. And suddenly, the hybrid who was supposed to outlive everyone is cornered, powerless, and used as food. That one moment flips the whole story. Because if Isaac can die, then all the talk of immortality and all the promises Prodigy made mean nothing. These kids aren't gods. They're just children with new vulnerabilities. And the worst thing is, they're locked in a system that's teaching them to underestimate danger and to believe they can't be hurt. And I think what makes Isaac's death hit even harder is this silence around it. Kirsch is the one who told him to handle the work. Then he sits back and watches it unfold on a screen. And I'm sure some people will argue that since they didn't show Kirsch watching Isaac, maybe he didn't see it. But we know he's got the same access. And we know he saw what went down with Arthur and Slightly in that same lab. So even if the camera didn't cut to him this time, that doesn't mean he wasn't tuned in. Also, for a place like Prodigy and with everything they've got going on, their security is very poor because nobody steps in to pull him out. Well, Arthur tried later on, and we all know what happened to him later, so the message is brutal. You're not as safe as you were told, and the people who claim to protect you are more interested in the experiment than in your survival. And it's not just about Isaac. His death sets off a chain reaction. The moment one hybrid falls, it proves the rest can too, and it cracks the armor around every Lost Boy. That idea they held on to, that they were unkillable, and that they were the future, it's gone in an instant. The eyeball monster made it happen. So was Isaac's death just a dumb accident, or was it something else? Because the more you look at it, the less it feels random. The sheep wasn't just standing around. The eye, which is now inside the body of the sheep, was watching and waiting. And the second Isaac wedged that door open to place the food on the floor, the eye slammed its head against the glass and lost his balance, which left him trapped and locked him inside the fly's pen, which raises a ton of questions. Did the eye actually know Isaac was part machine, and that the only real way to take him out was to push him into the fly's pen? It almost feels like it understood that the fly was the one thing that could break him. Some might also say that's just bad luck, or the wrong place, wrong time thing, but it's not. That's cause and effect. And Hawley himself has said it. This wasn't animal instinct. The eye understood the situation. It saw the opportunity and it took it, which means Isaac didn't just die because he broke the rules. He died because something else wanted him to. And that's a whole different level of threat. The eye didn't need claws or acid to kill him. It just nudged the domino, and it turned an ordinary feeding run into a death trap. I think this scene also clears up the whole debate from the last episode about whether the eye was warning Chibuzo or distracting her. It's obvious now. It wasn't warning her, it was distracting her, so the blood ticks could break loose and do their thing. And we see the same pattern here. When the fly started to feed, the eye stood up on two legs, almost like it was excited, and then went to eat the grass, which also makes you wonder, does it also only eat what its host eats? Like if it takes over a sheep, it eats grass, and if it takes over a human, does it eat what they eat too? That's pretty wild to think about. But there's another layer too. Is the eye actually looking out for its own kind by feeding the other aliens on purpose? Or is it just using them as pawns and setting them loose so they'll take out the humans for it? That's what makes this thing so unsettling. It's never just one move. It's always playing a bigger game. And here's the terrifying part. If the eye is capable of that kind of planning, then it's not just another monster in Prodigy's collection. It's a mind and a manipulator. All we've seen it do all this time in the containment is observe and learn. waiting for a chance to tilt the balance. And the first time it strikes, something we thought was immortal ends up dead, which forces the question, if this creature can set up one death so cleanly, how many more does it already have lined up? The fly shows its teeth. So let's talk about the flies, because one of the questions before this episode was, what predator could possibly kill a hybrid? These kids were built to be untouchable, stronger than humans, tougher than synths, and basically immortal. But then the fly shows up. When Isaac gets trapped, it isn't the xenomorph that tears him down, it's the fly. This thing doesn't just lunge, it spits corrosive fluid that eats straight through his synthetic body, acid that turns skin into liquid. And I find the way they feed very interesting, because once he's down, the flies don't feast like any other animal. They sip it up like they're slurping the fluids from his synthetic frame like it's fuel. That's the moment everything shifts, because for the first time, we see a creature designed to hunt the hybrids themselves, and not humans or livestock. And I don't get why Isaac chose to step into that pen of all pens in that lab. He picked up the metal himself to feed them, so he clearly knew what they eat, and he has to know that he's made of the same thing. So why go inside? And sure, the feeding hatch yanked off, but still, it doesn't add up. Unless you remember that these hybrids might have strength and knowledge, but their minds are still kids' minds. And I think that's the real danger. They'll always think like children, and that's what's going to be their downfall. So the fly doesn't care about their strength and their so-called immortality, and it cuts right through all of it, and that's the nightmare. Up until now, the Lost Boys believed the danger was outside, whether it was humans who didn't understand them, Prodigy's experiments, or the xenomorphs in their cages. But now, there's something in the lab that is their predator, something they can't outthink or outlast. And this is where Prodigy's lie collapses. They promised control and safety. They told the hybrids they were the future, but if a single fly can melt through one of their best, then what's left of that promise is nothing. The Lost Boys are being broken. Isaac's death would have been bad enough on its own, but episode 6 makes it clear. Prodigy isn't just losing control. It's actively breaking the Lost Boys apart. Just look at Nibs. She has part of her memory wiped clean, and trauma stripped out like it never happened. On paper, that feels like a fix, but in reality, it's actually a theft. She wakes up missing days of her life, confused and anxious, because pieces of who she was are just gone. That's not healing, that's control. It's Prodigy deciding which version of her is acceptable, and deleting the rest. And I guess Wendy also played a part in this, but what really struck me was how sloppy it all was. They erased Nibs' memory, and then in the very next scene we see Wendy with Nibs, just trying to check on her friend, and ends up reminding her of everything they just tried to bury. And of course it wasn't malicious, because she was equally confused. And that also shows how badly Sylvia botched this. If you're going to erase someone's memories, shouldn't you at least let the people around them know? Or come up with a better cover story? Instead, it's like they did the procedure and 2 minutes later it was undone. And now poor Nibs is left more confused than ever. She should have been the one who got fired and not Arthur. And speaking of Arthur, he finally draws a line by refusing to play along, and he's immediately punished. Adam fires him and cuts him loose. And that's when Slightly, under Morrow's pressure, follows him into the lab and locks him in with a facehugger. Seconds later, Arthur's body isn't his anymore. He's reduced to nothing but a host. So now you've got Nibs with an erased memory, Arthur with no future, and Isaac with no life at all. 3 different people with 3 different punishments, but all sending the same message. If you resist or grow, or even if you try to break free, you will be erased. And if you get punished one way or the other for growing up, then what does that make Prodigy? A parent protecting its children, or a prison burning through its inmates? Why this changes everything. Isaac's death wasn't just another body on the pile. It ripped the mask off everything Prodigy has been selling. Because the eye isn't some background freak they can keep behind glass. It's thinking, planning, and moving pieces around like it owns the board. Now, mind you, it's doing all this without lifting a finger, because it doesn't need to. It just sits back and nudges cause and effect into motion and then slips through the cracks once chaos takes over. That much feels certain. But the real question is, what's its endgame? I think that's what's going to be fascinating to watch in these last 2 episodes. And as for the fly, it's not just another monster to showcase. It's the first real predator of hybrids. The proof that immortality was never on the table. And it also makes you wonder about the other specimens we haven't even seen in action yet. What else are they capable of? Anyways, you put those together and the truth is brutal. Prodigy isn't in control. It never was. The whole system is feeding on itself. Hybrids turned into hosts, memories rewritten, and experiments running wild. What was supposed to be a showcase of human brilliance has become a trap for everyone inside. And maybe that's the real mistake here. Boy Cavalier holding on to this species instead of letting it go. Because if the very aliens he dragged in can wipe out his $1 trillion hybrid project, then was it ever worth keeping them around?